What's up, everybody, and welcome to episode 93 of the Idiotic Sports Talk. I'm your host, Liam Gavin, coming to you live from my dining room. And today I just want to give a Week 14 recap around the NFL. A lot of great games, a lot of good stuff. A lot of the favorites that were supposed to win, they got the job done and won. So let's go through it. Let's start with the Thursday night game. The Vikings beat the Steelers 36-28. Kirk Cousins, 216 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. Dalvin Cook had a monster game, 205 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. And Justin Jefferson, 7 catches, 79 yards, and a touchdown. As for Ben Roethlisberger, the Steelers quarterback, 308 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, and an interception. The rookie running back Najee Harris had 94 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown, and he also had a receiving touchdown on the night. And Chase Claypool had 8 catches for 93 yards. So the Vikings beat the Steelers to go 6-7 on the season and keep their playoff hopes alive. The Vikings were up 29-0 at one point, but almost blew the game. And Dalvin Cook absolutely just went off. He was running like a madman. No one on the Steelers wanted any piece of that guy. And the Vikings defense gets a lot of credit. They sacked Big Ben 5 times and made him real uncomfortable in the pocket. And the Steelers really didn't look that good until late in the game when the game was, pretty much out of reach. And Chase Claypool, his new nickname should be Chase Claypool because there was no timeouts left on the clock, or there's no timeouts left for the Steelers, and there's about 30 seconds or less on the clock. He catches a reception and he starts celebrating. And, that just keeps taking time off the clock instead of going up, giving the ball to his center so they could spike it. Instead, he just makes a boneheaded play, and it costed the Steelers. The Steelers are now 6 wins, 6 losses, and 1 tie on the season. Into the Sunday games, we have the Saints beating up the Jets 30-9. Taysom Hill, 175 passing yards, no touchdowns or interceptions, but he did have 73 rushing yards for 2 rushing touchdowns. Alvin Kamara, 120 rushing yards and a touchdown. As for the rookie Zach Wilson, 202 passing yards, no touchdowns or interceptions. And Braxton Berrios was his main offensive weapon on the day, 6 catches for 52 yards. So the Saints, they snapped their 5-game losing streak and are now 6-7 on the season. Alvin Kamara on the field show how important he is. When he wasn't on the field, the Saints were losing games. Go figure, his first game back, they get the win. And the Saints had 203 rushing yards on the day, while the Jets only had 78 rushing yards. The Jets just couldn't do much versus the Saints defense, and I kind of had a feeling that would be the story of the afternoon as the Jets fall to 3-10 on the season. Next is the Falcons beating the Panthers 29-21. Matt Ryan, 190 passing yards, a touchdown, and no interceptions. Cordell Patterson continues to have a good season. He had a rushing touchdown. And Kyle Pitts, the tight end, the rookie tight end, 5 catches for 61 yards. As for quarterback Cam Newton on the Panthers, 178 passing yards, no touchdowns, an interception, and a rushing touchdown. However, he was benched again, the second time in, I believe, 3 games. So in comes P.J. Walker, 75 passing yards, a touchdown, and an interception. And Robbie Anderson, this was probably his best game of the season, 7 catches for 84 yards and a touchdown. So the Falcons get a much-needed win on the road versus a divisional rival to go 6-7 on the season and to keep their playoff hopes alive. The game was tied 7-7 when Cam Newton threw a pick 6, and that instantly swung momentum to Atlanta. And the Falcons' defense stepped up. They had 2 picks, a sack, and a forced fumble. Panthers are now 5-8 on the season. Next is the Seahawks beating the Texans 33-13. Russell Wilson, 260 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Rashad Penny had 137 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. As for Tyler Lockett, 5 catches, 142 yards, and a touchdown. Davis Mills, the rookie quarterback for the Texans, 331 passing yards, a touchdown, and no interceptions. And wide receiver Brandon Cooks, 8 catches for 101 yards. So the Seahawks get a win on the road to go 5-8 on the season. Something finally clicked for Seattle this game that wasn't there all season, and that was the run game. And the Seahawks had 193 rushing yards, while the Texans only had 63 rushing yards. And I have to say, Davis Mills did look good in this game. He didn't turn the ball over. Unfortunately, did not get the win. Texans are now 2-11 on the season. Next is the Chiefs absolutely smoking the Raiders 48-9. Patrick Mahomes, 258 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. Clyde Edwards-Helaire had 2 rushing touchdowns on the day, and Tyreek Hill, 4 catches for 76 yards. As for Raiders quarterback Derek Carr, 263 passing yards, a touchdown, an interception, and a fumble. And Hunter Renfrow with another monster game, 13 catches, 117 yards, and a touchdown. So the Chiefs, they slap around the Raiders, and now we're on a 6-game winning streak and are now have a 9-4 record. And the Chiefs defense, they've really been stepping it up these last few weeks. They had an interception, 4 forced fumbles, 4 sacks, and a fumbled return for a touchdown. And the Raiders' offense just wasn't there at all. It just seems like every time the Raiders play the Chiefs, they just get owned every single time. And in the beginning of the game, the Raiders team, they actually took the field. They actually stood on the Chiefs logo and started to get themselves pumped up, and that was probably the beginning of the end for them. The Raiders are now 6-7 on the season. Next is the Browns beating the Ravens 24-22. Baker Mayfield, 190 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. Jarvis Landry, his wide receiver, caught a touchdown, and tight end Austin Hooper had a touchdown catch. As for Lamar Jackson, he left the game really early with a foot injury. Tyler Huntley came in, 270 passing yards, a touchdown, no interceptions, but did fumble the ball twice. And Mark Andrews, the tight end, 11 catches, 115 yards, and a touchdown. And the rookie Rashad Bateman had 7 catches for 103 yards. The Browns get a much-needed win over a divisional rival to go 7-6 on the season. And the Browns, it got a little scary for them. They're up 24-6 at halftime and almost blew it. But the Browns defense, they really stepped up. They had 4 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumbled touchdown. Lamar went out with an ankle injury, and Tyler Huntley came in. And honestly, Tyler Huntley almost pulled off the upset. I don't know what's up with Lamar's ankle. I don't know if he's good to go or not next week, but I do hope a speedy recovery for him, as the Ravens are now 8-5 on the season. Next is the Cowboys beating the Washington football team 27-20. Dak Prescott, 211 passing yards, a touchdown, and 2 interceptions. CeeDee Lamb, 7 catches for 61 yards. And Amari Cooper, 5 catches, 51 yards, and a touchdown. As for Washington quarterback Taylor Heineke, 122 passing yards, a touchdown, an interception, and a fumble. And Cam Sims was the best offensive weapon for Washington that day with 3 catches, 69 yards, and a touchdown. So the Cowboys get a win on the road versus a divisional rival to go 9-4 on the season. And like I said last week, the offense just continues to struggle. Dak threw a pick 6 late in that game to give life back to Washington. I don't know what he was thinking. Just Dak hasn't been looking that good, and the play calling's just been awful too. But as for the defense, they saved the day yet again. 5 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, a fumble touchdown, and an interception. And, Washington football team, they really had no answers all game long for this Dallas defense. And I know Washington, they were chanting last week, "We want Dallas." And at the end of the game, clearly they didn't, because, they took the loss. Washington is now 6-7 on the season. And I was out at that game. And honestly, what I have to say about FedEx Field, I had a great time there. It's just that their parking was absolutely horrendous. I had to park probably 3 miles from my seat. My dad and I had to walk all that way. But you know what? It was worth it. We got to see the Cowboys win, especially against a divisional rivalry. So definitely worth it at the end. Next is the Titans beating the Jaguars 20-0. Ryan Tannehill, 191 passing yards, no touchdowns, no interceptions, but a rushing touchdown on the day. And running back Deontay Foreman had 47 rushing yards and a touchdown. As for Trevor Lawrence, 221 passing yards, no touchdowns, and 4 interceptions. Marvin Jones Jr., 6 catches for 70 yards. So the Titans sweep the Jags this season and move to 9-4. The Titans offense really wasn't that great, but the defense had 4 interceptions, 3 sacks, and they allowed 0 points. And Trevor Lawrence just did awful this game. 4 picks is not looking good for him. The Jaguars had 8 rushing yards on the day. That's right, 8 rushing yards, while the Titans had 102 rushing yards. So that's a big story in that game. And the Jaguars are now 2-11 on the season. They have now lost 5 straight games. The next game we're looking into is the Broncos smoking the Lions 38-10. Teddy Bridgewater, 179 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and no interceptions. Melvin Gordon had 111 rushing yards for 2 touchdowns. And the rookie Javonte Williams continues to impress. 73 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. He also had a receiving touchdown on the day. As for Jared Goff of the Lions, 215 passing yards, a touchdown, and an interception. And the rookie Amon-Ra St. Brown having another good game, 8 catches for 73 yards. So the Broncos get a big win to go 7-6 on the season. And they have a huge win for Demaryius Thomas, who passed away last Thursday from a seizure. Very tragic news, very sad. Rest in peace to Demaryius Thomas. He was such a fun player to watch, such an electric receiver. And the Broncos, they lined up 10 players to start the game. The 11th player that was missing was a wide receiver to honor Demaryius Thomas. The Broncos got a penalty for it, but the Lions declined. Total class act by the Lions. Total class act by the Broncos as well. Just overall an emotional game in Denver. So glad to see the Broncos win this game and honor their fallen receiver Demaryius Thomas. As for the Lions, they are now 1 win, 11 losses, and 1 tie on the season. Next is the Chargers beating the Giants 37-21. Justin Herbert, 275 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Austin Eckler had a rushing touchdown. And with Keenan Allen out of the lineup, guys like Jalen Guyton and Josh Palmer, they each caught a touchdown pass. As for quarterback Mike Glennon on the Giants, 191 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns, an interception, and a fumble. Running back Saquon Barkley, 64 rushing yards, 3 catches for 31 yards, and a receiving touchdown. So the Chargers take care of business to go 8-5 on the season. Justin Herbert did his thing. He balled out, while the defense did its job versus the injured Giants offense. And the Giants offense just couldn't be even more awful, you know? They thought things would maybe turn around firing Jason Garrett, but that really wasn't the case. Giants are now 4-9 on the season. Next is the Niners beating the Bengals in a thriller in overtime, 26-23. Jimmy Garoppolo, 296 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no interception. Deebo Samuel, great wide receiver, but he's also a great running back as he scores another rushing touchdown. And George Kittle, the tight end, monster game out of him, 13 catches for 151 yards and a touchdown. As for quarterback Joe Burrow on the Bengals, 348 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. And T. Higgins, 5 catches for 114 yards. And the rookie Jamar Chase having an impressive game with 5 catches, 77 yards, and 2 touchdowns. So the Niners keep their playoff hopes alive by getting a big win on the road in overtime to go 7-6. George Kittle is an absolute animal. Ever since he came back from that injury, he's been having crazy good games like the old George Kittle before the injuries. And the Niners, you know, it got dicey for them. They were up 20-6 in the fourth quarter when the Bengals stormed all the way back to push the game into overtime. And the Bengals got the ball to start. They drive all the way downfield, but they had to settle for a field goal to make it 23-20. So Jimmy G gets another shot, and he's able to drive all the way down the field and finds Brandon Ayuk for the game-winning touchdown. You know, the Bengals, it looks like they're starting to slip away from the playoff race. And if you're a Bengals fan, I'd start worrying if I were you, as the Bengals are now 7-6 on the season. Next is the Bucks beating the Bills in another thrilling game that was in overtime, 33-27. Tom Brady, 363 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, and a rushing touchdown. Leonard Fournette, 113 rushing yards and a touchdown as well. And Chris Godwin, 10 catches, 105 yards. Receiver Mike Evans, 6 catches, 91 yards, and a touchdown. As for Bills quarterback Josh Allen, 308 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and an interception. But he also had 109 rushing yards and a rushing touchdown. Stephon Diggs, 7 catches for 74 yards, and Cole Beasley, 9 catches for 64 yards. So the Bucks get a solid win to go 10-3 on the season, and the Bucks offense is starting to look scarier every week. All of the receivers are getting involved. The running backs are running the ball really well. So the Bucks are definitely going to be a force to mess with, in the playoffs. And at one point, the Bucs were up 24-3 at halftime, and they allowed the Bills to get back in this game. But in overtime is when it mattered most, and Tom Brady delivered as he hit Brashad Perryman for a 58-yard game-winning touchdown. You know, it's got to hurt being a Bills fan because you're losing to the Pats last week on Monday night, which it's like, you know, they usually lose to the Patriots every year. And then they lose to Tom Brady, just like old times when Tom Brady was on the Patriots. And now they had to face him on the Bucs, and he still beats them, and he still owns the Bills. So the Bills are now 7-6 on the season. Next is the Packers beating the Bears 45-30. Aaron Rodgers, 341 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, no interceptions. Adams, 10 catches, 121 yards for 2 touchdowns. And as for Aaron Jones, he had a rushing and receiving touchdown on the day. And Justin Fields for the Bears, 224 passing yards, 2 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. But he also had 74 rushing yards, and he did fumble the ball. And as for Jakeem Grant, he had a receiving touchdown, and he also had a kick return touchdown. The Packers now cruise to a 10-3 record, and is Rodgers the MVP? He's starting to build a very strong case for it. And the Green Bay defense did their thing. They had 2 picks. One was a pick 6. They had 2 sacks and a forced fumble. And it still looks like Rodgers owns the Bears after all. But, you know, the Bears looked good at first. They had a 10-0 lead. And then Robert Quinn sacks Aaron Rodgers and does the discount double-check belt, mocks him. And we all know what happens when you do that to Aaron Rodgers. He just goes off. And when Robert Quinn did that to Aaron Rodgers, that just sealed the fate for the Bears. The Bears are now 4-9. Last but not least, the Monday Night Football game, we have the Rams beating the Cardinals 30-23. Matt Stafford, 287 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Cooper Kupp, 13 catches, 123 yards, and a touchdown. Odell Beckham Jr., 6 catches for 77 yards and a touchdown. It's good to see him back on the field making plays. And as for Van Jefferson, he had a receiving touchdown. He's been making plays quietly week in and week out. As for Murray, Kyler Murray, the quarterback of the Arizona Cardinals, 383 passing yards, no touchdowns, and 2 interceptions. James Conner, 2 rushing touchdowns, and he also had 9 catches for 94 yards. And A.J. Green, 7 catches, 102 yards on the night. So the Rams get a big win over their division rival Cardinals to go 9-4 on the season. I knew it. I said these two teams would split. They rarely ever, sweep each other. And Stafford to Kupp is just a deadly combination, very scary combination if you are the opposing defense having to face them. And the Rams defense also made plays, even with Jalen Ramsey not there. They were able to step up. The Cardinals are now 10-3. They really just did not look that great. They weren't in sync at all. And even worse news for the Cardinals, their star receiver DeAndre Hopkins is going to be missing the remainder of the season. So that's all I have. Thank you for listening to my Week 14 wrap-up. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. Please follow me on Instagram. Do what you can to like and share and promote my page. Thank you all. Have a wonderful night.